So yeah, I wanted to jump on today with a call because I know we had a brief conversation, brief touch on like issues with modern relationships, healthy masculinity, things like that. And I wanted to get your perspective from a woman as a women's coach. So if we could jump right in, what is your background? What are you into now? What do you do with the women's coaching? Where did it start from? How did you get here? What are you aiming to do?
It's a very large question. Yes. It started, so I, like you, have a massage therapy background, so an anatomy and physiology background, and then combined with my own health journey, dealing with women's health and things, those combined into a passion for speaking into holistic women's health. I used to go around and do public speaking on women's health. I used to call the presentation holistic healing for your hormones. So just empowering women with as much information as possible about how their bodies actually work, how we're constantly fighting against the natural rhythm of our bodies, and how we can learn to work with that, especially in a holistic way, how everything inside affects each other, how our external environment is affecting us. And we kind of get blocked into bits and pieces as women when we're talking about our health. And so it's really important to help women bring that back together. And then from there, the next layer was, well, I'm giving these women all of this incredible information, but they're struggling to go home and be consistent with it and use it and feel worthy of even feeling better and not having these pains and not having these crazy emotional waves and things that we kind of get told are normal, but don't have to be our normal. They're just common as women. And so I started looking more into, okay, well, how can I help them believe that it's possible? Because they now believe it's possible, I should say. They now believe it's possible because they've heard me talk about how possible it is. I need to help them believe it's possible for them and that it's worth it. So those are three really important layers when you're trying to help somebody. Do they believe it's possible? Do they believe it's possible for them? And is it going to be worth it in the end to go through what it takes to get there? And so there was that layer that I needed to add in. And as in my speaking and things, it kind of started going into more lifestyle, more mental health, more what's your level of self-belief? What's your level of self-worth? Because that's the next layer. Self-worth, deep down, whether we logically think it or not, a lot of us don't believe we're worthy of the results that I was speaking of. And so then it came to, I discovered NLU, Next Level University, and they preach holistic self-improvement, health, wealth, quality of life, and love. And I was like, oh, I'm going to love these guys, because holistic had become my favorite word for everything that I was trying to do. And so then working with Kevin and Alan, doing all of these great things. I came in initially, they brought me on as their MC and helping them with the live events because I was a public speaker, and it just proliferated from there. I started helping them with frameworks, learning their frameworks, and just realizing that, oh, this is where I can really help people. I'm always, because when I'm coaching women, I'm always going to bring in the things that I already know. But now that I can help them dive deeper into self-belief, self-worth, and fulfillment, it's just this extra piece of the puzzle that brings it all together. And so that's been actually really powerful to bring into my work.
Good answer. So I'm curious. We touched on this briefly in earlier conversations, and if you don't want to talk about it, we can just cut this part out. That you mentioned something in your personal relationship with your husband, that there was at some point there was like old wounds being triggered between the two of you was causing relationship dynamics. And I think there's the nugget of here when I want to talk to you was getting a woman's perspective on how men may misunderstand women in the context of heterosexual relationships, of like what's going on, what's the dynamic, what are they really seeking from the relationship, what's being miscommunicated, what is she saying versus what she's feeling, what she needs right now, what's not, and what a lot of guys tend to like misinterpret, overlook, that could then lead to compounding problems that could lead to potential destruction of relationship over the long term versus things we can start to catch early on. So in your case, we'll start with you. Like, what were the things in your relationship with your husband that was ping-ponging back and forth between like old core wounds that had to be resolved?
Yeah, so learning our core wounds has been just the most beneficial thing that has ever happened to my marriage, for sure. And yes, there's like so many things we can get into about how men are problem solvers and women are emotional beings. So typically when we come to you with an emotional thing, you guys come at us with a problem solver and we just want to be seen in our emotions, right? There's so much we can get into, but the one that we were talking about specifically when we were talking in group coaching was that like our core wounds don't combine very well. The core wound, there's three main core wounds that you can kind of bucket yourself into. And one is defective, the other one is unlovable, and the other one is unwanted. Now, those all sound terrible. Of course, we don't want to label ourselves that way, but regardless of how we feel about the label, those are the three categories. And the core wound of defective is typically I'm not capable enough, I'm not good enough, I'm not competent enough. And that's the one my husband has. And the core wound of the unlovable is just genuinely I'm unlovable. I'm not a good person. I'm not worthy of unconditional love, and rarely get to experience unconditional love. That's what the unlovable craves, is just love me as I am, right? And what happens is when I'm seeking love and he's seeking understanding and to feel competent and significant, those weren't being met very well. So we would cycle around each other. I would try and share truth and he would try and find solution without the truth. So I need to even clarify even further. So defectives are very triggered by truth. Truth really bothers them because they're trying to dance around they're constantly trying to dance around the fact that they don't feel competent enough. So typically they'll do whatever it takes to raise that bar and feel competent just through words. Sometimes it's not even actions. They just try and bring their mentality to, I'm actually up here. And what happens is when you point out the gap with truth, it's an instant like defensive. No, I'm not that. No, this. And unlovables are very hurt by non-truth. We're hurt by mistruth. So if you're trying to say something about me, about how I'm being or how you're perceiving me to be, and it is so wildly untrue, I get very upset because you're not seeing me accurately. And so those two can butt heads really hard.
How did you two identify these core wounds? Because this sounds like a very common dynamic. I think in
It is.
the roles will play out differently, and even the types of wounds will. There's a book I have some here in my shit show of a stack. It's called The Origins of You, and it talks about like the 5 core wounds. And I think there's different wordings for what you just said, but
There are.
unlovable is like it's like prioritization, safety, trust, and 2 others I can't think of the name of. But the feeling of I don't feel worthy enough. I don't feel unlovable. And unlovable meaning like maybe you didn't get enough attention from your parents at a certain point in your development. Like somewhere maybe like from 0 to 2 years old, 2 to 4 years old, whatever it was, one of the parents was, or the demonstration of affection was very misappropriated versus what was needed in the moment. And you end up internalizing that on like a neurological fundamental level, thinking all the time that there must be something wrong with me. Why? Because I just have this feeling I can't shake. It's just constantly there in the back of my head. It just feels like it's constantly there all the time. And so, in the 2 of your case, like how did you 2 come to this conclusion that you realize we had these core wounds and this is what's happening?
This is the loop. This is the cycle that we're going through. And so working with Alan, so Alan, CEO of NLU, you know Alan, and have the guys been on your show? Both of them, or have you had
Not
Kevin?
this particular show, but the last one.
Oh, okay. Awesome. And so Alan and his partner, Amelia, do relationship talks and relationship coaching. And so just the work I do through NLU myself, like understanding the core wounds, helping build those frameworks and things has been really awesome, obviously, to help. And then working through that in those conversations with Alan and Amelia was really, really helpful. But what was the biggest thing that needed to happen? So each of the core wounds needs to come up in something. So defectives need to come up in humility. They need to have a more accurate sense of self. Unlovables need to come up in courage. We need to feel enough courage to speak honesty instead of dancing around other people and trying to make other people feel good at the expense of ourselves. So we need social courage, especially. The unwanteds really need to lean into vulnerability. And so what happened was I stepped into courage. I stepped into as much courage as possible and helped him understand why humility was so important to be matched with that courage. And that's how it started to break that cycle. And we started to thrive after that. It's one of those things where Chris and I would always say, we're so in love. Like the love is not the problem. We love each other so much. Like he's my best friend. We stupidly love each other. We're ridiculously affectionate. We're those parents that the kids are like, oh, stop grabbing mom's butt. Like we love each other so much. But we would just be in this cycle of really not seeing each other and understanding each other. We were speaking 2 different languages almost. And so that would cause just these disruptions in our love, in our flow of love. And so, recognizing those patterns and really seeing, okay, defectives are very much driven by significance. And that's how that significance looks is very different. Like Chris is very much tied to his significance as a father. He's a really great dad. And so just things knowing, okay, he's seeking significance in this moment. He's seeking being seen in this moment. And I can put my whatever I need to away to help him feel and see that significance that he really craves. Just like he sometimes needs to put his significance away so he can just make me feel seen, loved, and valued.
Time frame did you notice this really starting to escalate in an unhealthy way? Like most of the time what I hear with most relationships, myself included, my own experience and my own personal experiments, we'll say, is 6 months to a year. It's like it's love and butterflies and the holy crap honeymoon, everything's amazing, and then all of a sudden the things that are underneath the surface start to come to the surface, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, where did this come from? Things were going so great. What the hell happened? What was it for you two? You've been married for how many years now?
We were married in 2012.
So about 13 years now?
Yeah.
12 and a half years?
So last June we celebrated our 12th anniversary. So this June it'll be 13 years of being married. Yeah.
Okay.
So the cycle, if you really look back, it happened. Yeah, once the honeymoon phase was over, right? That infatuation stage. It kind of just creeps up. But what happens is defectives and unlovables find each other so easily because defectives love feeling significant. And we love bombing on people. We love people as much as we want to be loved, right? And so we crave unconditional love so deeply that we easily give it to others, which makes the defective feel significant. And because they feel significant, they're so happy. We feel so loved and so seen. They're so happy with our love. Oh my gosh, look at them loving us because we love them so much. And so it just creates this beautiful infatuation in the beginning. And then as things get deeper and more involved and life happens, you start to miss each other a little bit in there.
It sounds very analogous to avoidant and anxious attachment.
Yeah. So the defectives typically become avoidant, anxious, even if let's go like independent, hyper independence, and codependency. So unlovables, we can fall into the trap of codependency because we just love so much and we just want to be with someone, and they get into dependency upon someone else. So they seek their significance in someone else. They seek this dependent relationship. And we love codependency. And then the unwanteds go into hyper independent. They're the hyper independent people. So that creates its own thing. But so one becomes very codependent. And so even let's say in arguments, in disagreements, he would need space. He would need space. And the unlovable in me was like, why are you trying to walk away from me right now when we're in this thing? We need to resolve this because we need to fix our love. What are we doing? And you're trying to walk away. Oh my goodness, you hate me. Right? When in reality, it was just a miscommunication. If he learned to communicate with me, I do need to walk away just to think. Some people need to talk to think. Others need to think to talk. He has to think before he can talk in a way that is going to be aligned with who he truly is. I'm the opposite. I have to talk it out to think. That's why Alan and I are long-winded all the time, because we talk to think. And so him and I just go. And so even just that right there, he's had to learn to communicate with me. I do just need a minute, but I am coming back. I'm coming back because I do value this conversation that we're having. I just need a minute. So even just that communication right there, when I felt abandoned, when he would walk away, and then he would feel stifled when I would chase him when he tried to walk away, like, no, like, let's fix this. Come on, what are we doing? That little cycle right there was detrimental at times. So now just him being able to say, you know what, I actually just need a minute, but I'm going to come back. I'm going to come back. And this is important to me. I just need a minute. I'll be back in like 10 minutes. Maybe I need an hour, whatever it is. And that allowed me to feel safe enough to give him that time, knowing that he's going to come back. He's not just going to avoid it and hope it goes away.
Yeah, what you're referring to in his case is something. Have you ever heard of the Gottman Institute, the Gottman couple?
Yeah.
Flooding, emotional flooding. Yeah, sounds a lot like that. That feeling of just like hormones hitting your system so friggin' hard, you literally just shuts down your rational thinking. You go into a full defensive mode, but then you're interpreting it as oh, you just hate me. That's why you're walking away. You don't want to
Yeah.
talk anymore.
Yeah. You
And the
don't
more
think
you
this
start to
is
chase them.
important. Yeah. So I need to show you how important this is. Like, why aren't you fighting for our love with me? Right. But it's that you get flooded and you just need a minute, or you are going to get defensive because you don't know how to handle that. So defensive is the automatic response. And so that, even just understanding that, has been so powerful. And then really leaning into what are just natural masculine and feminine needs. That's been really powerful too, letting him in more on my cyclical needs, helping him understand that I'm this different being all the time. Like, men understanding women and women understanding men in that way could just solve so many problems. Genuinely.
I agree. I agree 100%. And I think, but it's what's funny within that, I think there's a cultural pushback on that even having to be said as like a baseline. Like this idea of men act the way they do because they choose to, not because they are. Women act the way they do because they choose to, not because they are. And not to get into the whole, pronoun identity thing. But more super. Like my opinion around this is that, like, I'm not going to get political on this, but the idea being that I think culturally we've been trying to drill down to like the core of what society is, or what, like, where all the root causes of all of our identity and our culture and thing comes from. And my opinion is, like, it's almost like they're just drilling down looking for like the core of it, and at the core there's like, it's just this completely malleable, completely built from nothing, you could do whatever you want with it, like Legos, build whatever you want kind of thing from it. But on the way down drilling, you're going to hit this layer that's just biology.
Mm-hmm.
And even if you're a super feminine man or an ultra masculine woman, there is still just some attributes that fall into what it means to be a woman, what it means to be a man. That is just good to know for everyone to have a sense of, like, men love to problem solve. Even if you're like the most feminine man ever, women love to be heard. Even if you were like as masculine as like the CEO of like some multi-billion-dollar or whatever it may be, like those are still just fundamentally valuable things to know about each other. But I think there's a bit of pushback saying like, no, that's not because of who we are. It's because of people telling you it's how we're supposed to be. You're acting emotional because you want to problem solve because they tell you you're supposed to. No, it just genuinely makes me feel better. I love solving
And it's how
problems.
your
It feels
brain's
so
wired.
good. Yeah.
How your brain is wired. Definitely.
Yeah.
You're right. There's always going to be this underlying biological component. I mean, you and I both have this background in anatomy and physiology, so of course we're going to go there and be there. And I genuinely wish people would understand their anatomy and physiology better.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's your body, you're living in it. It's the one that you get. And to understand it more, I mean, especially I work with so many women who in their 30s and 40s are learning about how they're this cyclical being. And it's like, oh, I wish I knew this when I was like hitting puberty. And it's like, I know. That's why I talk about it so much.
It's crazy.
It's wild how much we don't know about our own bodies, and that there are differences biologically within us that we can work with or we can try and fight against. And you're right, it's a spectrum for sure. Like, it is some, right? It's just the general idea is that women can multitask and see more spectrally. We can see multiple outcomes. We can see all of these things a little more spectrally, which is why we get really overwhelmed easily. And then you guys come in and you have this beautiful way of honing in on this one thing. And it's wild because we're out here like, well, what about this, and this? You're like, no, this is it. This is the way. And that's why we partner so well together. If both can lean into those things and we learn to use them as strengths, it's wild how much you can accomplish, and just what, like, even just a beautiful home dynamic you can create, a relationship you can create, all sorts of things that can happen when you're just allowing each other to be in those things. But understanding just the principle alone that men are like the sun and women are like the moon. You guys are the same hormonally every day. You cycle through a 24-hour cycle every day. There is fluctuations in you throughout the day, but it's a 24-hour one. Women go through that same 24-hour cycle as you ish. We have different hormones and things, but ours is not in 24 hours. It's spread out over like 26 to 34 days. So we are mentally, emotionally, and physically, our brains and like things are happening physically different every day. And so there are some days where I am articulate, I am social, I am on fire. It's great. Today's not that day. So sorry. If you're listening, if you'd have had me about a week and a half ago, I might have had a different energy for you here. But understanding that and knowing that I can come in and give you the best that I can now in a lower energy season, knowing that I might not be as articulate, knowing that I'm not going to have the same energy and the same pizzazz. I'm not even going to have the same facial symmetry as I did a week and a half ago. So I don't even look as good as I could, literally. But to learn to accept that instead of, oh, I was on fire last week and this week I suck. Shame. I suck. I'm the worst. It's like, no, you are literally physically and mentally not set up for success in this arena right now. So I still want to show up, but I can show up with the grace and understanding and acceptance that it's going to be different and that that's okay. And so
you get a lot of, sorry, was that?
No, you go ahead.
Was there a lot of pushback from people in this regard as far as, I don't know, like perceived limitations or like, what do you ever hear people kind of saying like, that sounds like nonsense, or that's not fair, or this is why do men have that, women have that? It's not what anything along those lines. I mean, kind of like criticism towards these type of things you talk about, especially nowadays.
Yeah, I mean, there's just a lot of, I think it's a limiting belief for sure. I think a lot of women have a negative connotation, like with their cycles and with like their relationship with their female health and things. There's a lot of negative around that. It's like, oh, she's so hormonal and all these things. Like it's said in such a negative way, and so we take it on as negative. But when you can leverage it, it's actually a superpower. Like me leveraging when I'm naturally more wired to be creative, and that's when I do like all my creative work, way easier than when I'm trying to force myself to do it during other seasons, right? So if you can learn to leverage it, it becomes a superpower instead of this detriment. But there's this pushback of like, no, I can be who I want to be and do all of these things at any time. I agree. I also am doing what I want to do right now, even though I'm not physically, mentally, and emotionally set up for speaking even the best that I could speak right now. However, I understand that it's going to be that way, and like having the acceptance around that gives women so much permission to not have so much shame and guilt around the fact that last week they were crushing their workouts and this week they feel like a potato and they don't want to. That's so natural. So how can
potatoes
we I'm a potato, right? How can we lean into some gentle yoga and some stretching this week then for you so that you still feel like you're honoring your body, but you're not crushing some weightlifting thing, which is actually more detrimental. You're causing more cortisol. It's a whole thing. Women should learn to work out with their cycles, but we don't need to go there. But if you're interested in that, look it up. It's fabulous.
That's good to know. What is your experience been with men who are learning about this kind of stuff, feeling like it's just, I had a more profound thought there and I kind of lost it.
I know we're both
men stepping into this space. I know, right?
I mean, there's men who are resistant to it because they have this vision of how women are supposed to be, and they're supposed to be emotional and crazy, and that's this like negative thing about them. And so they have a hard time with the idea of this is something that is natural and important, and we should be allowed to express our emotions when we need to, because they are important and we're feeling them for a reason, and we're tuned into these things for a reason, right? So honestly, as men, if you are a man coming into a relationship and you understand this about your woman already, she's going to feel so seen, so loved, so understood. I mean, it's like a superpower. Genuinely, as a man, if you can come in and already understand these things, this woman is going to be like,
yeah. So I guess having guys be a lot more interested is one thing. I remember nowadays what I think is so fun. I imagine it's a female massage therapist who does a lot, and I'm just kind of tossing it a side point, but I think it becomes like a normalization. The problem is normalization of certain biological processes and functions across, men, women, and in the context of relationships. But one thing that makes me laugh, think about with massage therapy, is very commonly when I get like a new female patient who comes in, they have back pain, they have leg pain, whatever. I'll ask them like a breakdown, like, all right, when's it get better? When's it worse? What helps it? What doesn't help it? Somewhere along the way, they'll be like, yeah, I mean, working out helps it. If I sleep well, drink enough water. Sometimes when I'm on my period, it can get a little bit worse. I'm just like, sorry, what was that?
right?
They're like, when it's that time of the month. I'm like, you mean your menstrual cycle? Like that biological, natural, medical thing has been going on since the dawn of fucking human female beings, since
It's literally why we're all here.
That's why we exist in the first place. Like,
I know,
but it comes like this fear. I was like, oh, we can't talk about that. That's taboo. It's But I think it becomes like a big problem, at least in not in relationships, but men understanding like the female natural flow of things and not judging it, but being more curious of it. And then, like you said before, learning to leverage it. Say like, all right, she's having a rough week. Why? Because she's just like in her shedding phase, and just give her a little more space than usual. It's totally fine. Like, I'll just go do my thing and let her just give her some whatever, rather than coming in with like, guns a-blazing, ready to go into a fight, and not realizing like she might be a little bit more primed to trigger you than normal.
Yes.
She might be really good at poking at your core wounds a little more than normal. Just be aware of it. And don't blame her for it. So it doesn't mean like take her off the hook, but being
but have
observing
a healthy discussion.
Talking about open communication, talk about openly.
Yeah. But like you said, so she's already being like, my period, this and this, because we've been so conditioned to not even be okay talking about it. But in the reality, it is the reason all of us are here. It's like what creates life, this cycle, right? Obviously, we need the peace from the man. It's very important. That's why we coexist and do this beautiful thing. But it is so profound when I come across a man and they're like, oh, ew, don't talk about that. That's disgusting. It's like, do you ever want to have a healthy relationship with a woman? I couldn't imagine me being in just this low emotional state, feeling like my potato yucky self, and someone being in like, yeah, that's disgusting. It's like,
or are you down on the ground? I'm going to keep kicking you. That
right?
Sounds like a good idea.
I know. So, I mean, I was blessed with 2 boys, and they know exactly all about it. They know about it. They know, hey, this is where mommy's at today. And my boys already will be like, do you want your heat blanket, mommy? Yes, son, I do. Thank you. Like, that's going to be amazing. Let's like just curl up and do not these things today. And let's just curl up with my heat blanket. Right. It's just, I think I'm setting them up for success, understanding that is just this natural thing. Because all of a sudden, if you find out as a man in his late 20s that this is something that women's bodies go through, and you're like, oh, you're not doing yourself any favors at all. Yeah. And when you said like they might be more primed to trigger you and things, that's by design. I'm going to give you a cheat code. It is. I'm going to give you a cheat code to women right now. When we are ovulating, so that's when we're able to get pregnant. So we go through 4 cycles, and ovulation is like our inner summer. All of our seasons have like such a connection to a season. And so our ovulation is like summer. It is go time. Let's be outside. Let's be social. Let's go have some margaritas. Let's go skinny dipping. Like, it's that vibe. And if you already, as a man, know that when your woman is ovulating, your chances of getting some loving and some attention is like way higher than any other time at all. Like, just way higher. And so even right there, leveraging that, knowing that she's primed and ready to do that, you're ready to go because you're a man and you have your 24-hour cycle. It's entirely different, right? The fact that honestly we get pregnant as much as we do, just from a biological standpoint, in my opinion, is a miracle. Every pregnancy is a miracle, genuinely, because it's like, oh my gosh, what has to be in place for that to happen? Okay, but once we come out of our inner summer, we're not as interested anymore. Now we're primed for baby time. So we assume our body's constantly trying to get pregnant. It's assuming we're going to get pregnant. That's the cycle. And so when we're ovulating, that's the time to get pregnant. So we're social, our faces are more symmetrical. We're more just into all of these great ideas, right? And then it comes down. And now we don't have that estrogen anymore. We have this big surge of progesterone. Hopefully, if your woman does not have that big surge of progesterone, her PMS is going to be extra shitty, and it sucks. So that right there is like why women need to know what I'm telling them. But so right there, so right now in our ovulation, it's summer, we're ready to be social, we're ready to make a baby. Things don't bother us as much. We're not looking for your flaws, and we're not looking to pay attention to what bothers us in you right now. We're looking to make a baby. Now, the next season, we are priming to be pregnant. So now our environment is very important to us. What you did last week was fine. You do that again this week. Now it's like creating a disturbance in my environment, and I'm primed to notice it with annoyance. So we are actually more primed to be light and fun and not annoyed one season. And then the next week we're like, why are you chewing so loud? Now, I get it. The chewing is not detrimental to our space, but we're primed to notice anything that is going to be a disturbance to us. And it gets a bad reputation because, oh, she's PMSing, she's grumpy. And yes, if your hormones are not doing well, ladies, it's going to be a harder time for you. But even if you're getting that beautiful surge of progesterone and things, it's still, you are primed like mentally, neurologically, your brain is primed to notice anything that could be a disruption to you while you're like gestating this baby. So we're actually more primed to, poke you a little bit. It's wild.
Well, it's funny because I think a lot of guys will hear that and think like, well, this is bullshit. I shouldn't have to like change my attitude and mood every single week. And this, but as what we teach within the men's coaching space is like, the idea is not to shift your personality every single week. The idea is just like, be yourself and just, for lack of better words, weather the storm.
Yes.
Be okay with understanding that she's going to like poke and prod once in a while. And it's just part of the process.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just how you're operating naturally, functionally. It reminds me, I had a patient who was pregnant a while back. A couple of years ago, I saw her, and she was like 8.5 months in. She's like, I could smell my husband's shampoo 2 rooms over. Yes. Like, what the hell? It was disgusting. I had to get out of the house. I had to change the shampoo. It was disgusting. Yep. Men not understanding, again, like not trying to like let them off the hook. Mm-hmm. Understanding the elevated level of sensory perception that women have around these types of things, and how sometimes it may not show up obviously as she might not go, his chewing is really loud, which must mean my progesterone is spiking right now, which must mean I'm in my second. It's more just like, fuck, why is he chewing so loud? That's the only bit of information you get. So you have to try to figure that out from there. And then rather than him taking it logically, thinking like, oh, she must be trying to piss me off today. Like, no, she's just asking you like maybe a nonsensical question that in a week from now she'll probably be like, that was a dumb thing for me to say. Yeah. But you just saying like, all right, I'm chewing loud, cool, I'm going back to my chewing now. And just kind of go through it. She'll thank you later if you just stay grounded enough to not be bothered by little things like that.
Mm-hmm. Do you see how the superpower is in both of you knowing though, oh, his chewing is driving me crazy right now, but it's because I don't have the patience I normally do. Like even me communicating that with my children, hey guys, like mommy was impatient a little bit earlier. I'm sorry. Like I apologize to my kids all the time. I think being able to apologize to your kids is such an awesome thing you can do, because then they don't grow up thinking they have to be perfect as adults, because who the hell really knows what they're doing all the time? None of us, right? We're constantly just growing through everything. And so like they even know, like, you know what, like when I'll say, you know what, actually mommy's feeling a little impatient and like the noise is really bothering me and like stuff like that. They know, and they'll be like, okay, thanks mommy for telling us. Right? Instead of me just going right into, I'm mad and not assessing why within myself. So me knowing, Chris knowing that that's what's happening. And even tonight, I was like a little prickly when I got home from playgroup because I was overstimulated, and I'm in that season myself right now. And it's just like, he's just looking at me. He's like, what do you need? I know you have to go on a podcast soon. What do you need from the kids and I, just to give you the rest moment that you need? Because clearly it's been a busy day for you, even though you're in your season of needing rest. Like just that right there instantly took my defenses down, me being like, oh yeah, I was a little prickly there, Kate. But him not, again, blaming and doing all these things. And it creates just this beautiful dynamic if you let it.
There was a good quote I heard. It was a video. It was a Connor Beaton. He's a men's coach. And one of his videos was like, stop trying to understand her. And the understanding was more in the sense of like, stop trying to get this exact play-by-play of exactly where the situation is. Like, just like, okay, like, is this an abnormal situation? Probably. Does it mean there's something a little bit more bothering? Can I just, anything I could do for you right now? No? Cool. I'll just step back and give you some space. Because I know you'll be back to normal in a couple of hours, probably a day or two. Just giving you that space. Like, stop trying to problem solve this down. Like, how can we stop this from ever happening ever again? Like, good fucking luck with that one. Like, good luck with that.
Probably not.
Probably never. But just saying something. There was another one. There was caught a video. It was a woman. She was in Britain, and she was talking about how her husband asked her, and this is an interesting, like the what do you need thing. I think she's a stay-at-home mom with 2 kids, and 2 or 3 kids, and her husband asked her, like, it would mean the world to me if I just came home from work and you just like greeted me at the door, just like a hug and a kiss, and said, like, you know, like, I'm happy to see you. And her response immediately, she recorded herself talking, was like, so it would be one of those like 1950s housewives, like, oh, hello, honey, I just dropped everything I'm doing just to come see you. Here's your martini. And he's like, I'm not telling you, I'm just asking. Like, it'd be just a quick, like, greet me, just like say hi, how you doing, miss you, and then I'll help you with the chaos of the kids. And she's like, I fucking hated it at first, but I gave it a try. Tried it for one day. And I decided to make a big deal out of it. And then we decided that like the kids would get involved. So when he got home, everyone for, oh my God, dad's home. And they tried doing it. And like one of the kids tried running and he tripped over the dog and fell on his face. And then the sister started hysterical laughing. He started crying and it turned into a complete shit show. And she comes outside and tells him like what happened. And he starts dying laughing. And he's like, that's exactly what I needed. Thank you so much. What do you need right now? And it's like when you get to that point of open communication between the two of you, it's like, okay, maybe you were home with the kids going crazy today. You're wired up, and then you had a long day at work. You're wired up.
Yes.
Can we just put that aside for a second and say, like, we're both a little strung up. What does each other need? That we just get that communication going? Because that's the biggest thing I see is the mind reading hypothesis, mind reading fallacy, rather. Is that, oh, you should just know. You should be able to just tell what I need right now. Both men and women doing this shit. Like, I don't understand why I have to explain myself. Like, because maybe another 100 million years, I'll have mind reading powers. Maybe, but until then, I need you to just speak it. Whatever it is, guy to girl, girl to guy, whatever it is, just like, and if you don't know, give the person the space to just talk it out. It's like I said, either think it through or talk it out.
Yes.
And figure out, like, are you a talk it out type? Are you a think it through type? Cool. This is a big one, is like setting ground rules for like conflict and things like that. It's like if we get into a fight, ground rule is I'm just going to need 10 minutes to think.
Yeah.
And then we'll come back and we'll minimum 10-minute break. We will come back. We have to reconnect and then go through whatever the problem was. Yeah.
The mind reading thing is really powerful, though. Like, let's not ever assume that we're mind readers. And yes, Chris and I are almost 15 years plus in, for sure 15 years plus being together. So there are certain things that, yeah, he automatically knows about me now, right? But even then, I'm changing all the time. I'm doing all this crazy stuff all the time. He has no idea unless I express that to him. Now, the thing about being able to express, though, we need to have a safe space to express. So if you guys want to incorporate the let's not be a mind reader thing, then when the person is ready to tell you and be open with you, instead of expecting you to be a mind reader, you need to also have the agreement that you're going to listen as well and not get defensive. Like, because sometimes let's just, I'm the woman in this scenario because that's easiest for me, obviously. Hey, like, it would mean a lot to me if we could have more date nights together. And it would be amazing if you planned them every now and then. I need a safe space to be able to express that. Yes, it would be wrong of me to just like get bitter and more resentful because he's not planning date nights and be like, well, you should just take me out on dates. That's not a win scenario either. But if I express my truth and like not expecting you to be a mind reader, I need that to be met with openness and safety, emotional safety, because a lot of times when you are expressing your truths, it's met with defensiveness. Oh, you don't think I plan enough dates? Especially if your core wound is defective. All you hear is, I am not doing a good enough job.
It's never good enough for you.
It's never good enough. You pointing out that you want a date night means that I suck because I haven't given you a date night. When in reality, she's just saying, I would love some time with you.
Well, why didn't you just say that? And it's just
right?
like, yeah.
It's like, I am saying that, but sometimes we automatically build this mind reader relationship because we're not creating emotional safety when people do want to express. Now, everyone needs emotional safety, but women especially need emotional safety because we're emotional beings. And so we need a safe space to be able to express our emotions and then help. Like, sometimes it's very helpful for the men to come in and help us problem solve those emotions. And sometimes we just need to be listened to. And you just need to be like, okay, what do you need? Maybe I need a solution. Maybe I just needed to vent. Maybe I just need to curl up with some ice cream and I need you to cuddle me right now. Like, whatever it is, right? And you're going to have those moments too as men where you just need to vent about my day at work. Can I do that? Absolutely. Right?
Yeah.
Like, it's going to go both ways, but there needs to be a mutual understanding there that if you want me to express my truth, I need it to be met with openness.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what we love the men's work, men's coaching is like, I think it starts like I'm glad you're doing with your kids too, and getting this point across to men that if you did not have a space growing up in which you were able to at least articulate your emotions, interpret your emotions, we're not born This is a very common misconception. We're not born with a natural, like, you don't come out of the womb like placenta, baby, guidebook. Oh, okay.
Emotional
So
intelligence.
emotional intelligence guidebook. So when you feel this, it's anger. When you feel this, it's anxiety. When you feel, no, you have to figure it out. Somebody has to teach you. Somebody has to put a name to it. I had a patient for massage. She was Polish, and I think she was a single mother. I think her parents she was divorced. She had to like leave her daughter with her parents in Poland, and she had to work in Germany for like a couple of years. She was like bouncing back and forth, and she was just like working her ass off, crazy hours. And eventually, one day she had an anxiety attack, and she went to the doctor, and she's like, "All these symptoms. This is what happened. This is what happened. This is what happened." And the doctor was like, "Oh, you're having anxiety." She's like, "What the hell is anxiety?" This was like a 45-year-old woman.
Yeah.
I was like, I'd never heard the word anxiety before, and the idea that a lot of men say, I get this all the time with guys that I talk to and work with, is like, well, that pissed me off. Oh, when that sad thing happened, what happened? Oh, that pissed me off. When that that thing that frustrated, that pissed me off. And when you needed to grieve when that person died, oh, that pissed me off. Like everything is transmuted into anger.
Yes.
Why? Because you were never taught, what does grief feel like? What does sadness feel like? What does depression feel like? What does anxiety feel like? What does feeling neglected feel like? What is, like, embarrassment, guilt, whatever it may, anger, anger. Getting to that point where you can say, like, oh, this is what this feels like. Now I can communicate it to you.
Mhm.
Now I'm angry. Why? Because I know what angry feels like.
Mhm.
I know I just might need some time to get it out. So if I blow up or something that I didn't want to, it's not intended. It's just the anger. It's this. It's whatever it may be. Or I need to grieve. I need to do this. I need to do that. But like I said, just for men in particular, teaching them, like, you have a spectrum of emotions you can feel, and it's not just a woman's thing.
Yes.
To be like, oh, women cry, men don't. Like, bullshit. Like, one thing I love saying is, like, you have tear ducts for a reason. It's not a vestigial organ. There's even as a whole biological like social biological underpinning of, like, to why you should grieve. I was talking about my father about this today, about the importance of grieving. Because even he has a hard time, like, letting himself being emotional in front of people, as most men from that previous generation do.
Yes.
Big generational gap. And I made a point to say, like, you have to understand, it's like two things. One, it's a cue to other people that you're going through something difficult, and you might just need some. You're trying to signal to other people, can you protect me while I just digest this right now? I need to let my guard down, let us digest. So can you make sure I feel safe around you? Two, you're showing everyone you're not a psychopath. Because if something tragic happens and you're not getting a little bit upset about it, it's like, what the fuck's going on in this guy's head?
Right, and you're all stoic.
You're like, I'm fine, I'm totally fine. Like, it's okay. Like, the house burned down, no big deal. Like, either you care and you're bottling it, or you genuinely don't care, in which case I should be afraid of you.
Mm. Or you're just like the most emotionally regulated human of all time. Like, yeah. Odds are probably not.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially that generation too, right? And it's in our generation, we're doing our best to help men, hopefully. And this is important for women too. You need to be able to. There's so many women that I talk to, they're like, it makes me really uncomfortable when my man cries. Like, I make it like they see them as less than. And that's why you guys feel that way. You've been brought up and all of this stuff to the only emotion that is acceptable from men is anger. Everything else is looked at as a weakness, as a problem, and it's so unfortunate. And I think, as a society, I think we're doing better with it, because you guys have those spectrums of emotion too, just like you said. Right now, are you as great at feeling them, articulating them, and those kind of things? No, not as much, but you can become that way. Now, you're never maybe going to be as in tune to them as women are just innately, but you can be. And again, there can be an emotionally intelligent man comparing to a very unemotionally intelligent woman, and then there's a whole gap thing, right? So it's not just male female here, it's just your level of emotional awareness and emotional understanding. But in my household, we say it's okay to be mad, it's not okay to be mean. And that's really important, because men, when they're dealing with anger, it comes out in, I'm not angry at myself. I don't typically it's, I don't know how to be angry at myself. I'm not looking in the mirror here. I'm angry and I'm looking for someone to put that anger on.
Yeah. Externalizing. Yep.
Externalizing that anger. Mm-hmm. And so we're trying to teach our boys that you're going to feel angry and frustrated and disappointed and all of these things. And all of those feelings are okay. You can come tell mommy that you're frustrated or angry with me at any time. You cannot be mean about it. Those are two different things. They do not need to go together. So you can be mad, cannot be mean.
Yeah, and just take it out on stuffed animal, a pillow.
Right, you need to go let out some aggression,
Scream
especially
into
if
a
men are
pillow. It's like,
developing. You guys are developing your testosterone and stuff. Like it's a whole thing. So
channel it in
go,
a healthy
right?
way. Yeah.
Yes.
Go do a workout or
Definitely.
something. You'd be amazed how much it'll just take that steam off of
Yes.
you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and you made a point, and I'm sure if I clip it out, it's going to get a lot of hits about like like women feeling disgusted by men crying or feeling off put by men crying, and I think there's an implication that women are born to be off put by men crying, or that the entirety of society looks at men crying as like a something not to be taken serious. But in reality, like you said, it's taught through the lack of observation. Like if you grew up my father told him to his face, like I think I've seen him cry 5 times in my entire life.
Yeah.
Like, and I've actually talked to guys who are just like, the best thing my father gave to me was that he cried openly, repeatedly in front of me when I was
Yes.
growing up. And this guy, a buddy of mine, he's like married to 2 kids, and he's like, I cry at Disney movies, I cry at like Marley and Me at the end of the movie, like all these sad like whatever. I just let it out. It just hits me, I let it out. But it's not so much that women are going, ugh, you're weak. It's more going like, I have never seen this before.
I've never
Like
seen this before.
literally never seen this before. Like my dad was
Yes.
so, and we say the word stoic. It's not even stoic though. It's
No.
it's misuse of the word. Like stoic is like, I feel it, but it's not affecting me to such a level that I'm being
I can
brought
regulate.
down by it. I can regulate it.
Yeah.
Versus like I'm straight up trying to ignore it and push it down. It's a totally different thing. Yeah.
Yes, and that's just it. We get uncomfortable when we see men cry because it also hasn't been modeled to us, right? And I hope that as these generations go that that's going to shift, right? But it's this whole thing. And so if you as a woman want to be seen and accepted and supported in your emotional range, we need to be able to do that for the men too.
Yeah. Yeah. There's that one clip I'm gonna pull it up. I think it's like Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. I think it was, and I think it was that one where the officer is crying and the tear comes in. It's like, what? Get back! And he just pulls it back up into him.
Yes.
And it's funny, but if you think about it, it's actually a pretty apt portrayal of men in society today.
Especially because he's the most masculine man other than the dad. The dad is like just this, and he doesn't talk much and he doesn't say much. But he is like the perception of like the strong man in the town. So obviously he can't cry. You got to get that tear back in there. So even just things like that. Yeah, that's a really good example.
Yeah. So we touched on that point with relationships with women that come to you. How do you actually go about coaching women who are just like, we'll say that to you, like, I feel gross when he cries. I don't know. What do I do? Like, how do you work with the woman that's trying to say like, well, here's what's happening. Here's why it's okay. Here's how you deal with it. And then the men saying, no, you should cry in front of her once in a while, depending on the situation. It's like, if you like you fell over and stubbed a toe, is it crying, bawling your eyes out? Probably not. If someone in the family died, your mother, your father, yeah, you can cry. You should probably just let it out. Yeah. What do you go about in terms of like educating women, men, whoever you approach mostly, in terms of how to deal with that emotion, teaching them how to go through it?
Yeah, I mean, most of the women I talk to wish their men would be more emotional. That's a desired outcome.
I hear that, and I also hear the men somewhere in the comments right now saying like, you say that
Exactly. But when we are, you aren't accepting of it. So that's the thing.
Yes.
When it happens, we need to be ready for something, especially if it's a man who hasn't been given permission ever to explore those emotions. It's going to be messy at first.
Yeah.
And we need to give them the grace to do that, the grace and understanding and support as best we can to do that. And so if it was just a means of, I don't like seeing my man cry, I can't be around it, well, then we need to explore the why. We need to explore what's the belief there. And is that true? Or was that instilled in you from something else? Does that feel true to you? So we would go into the belief. We would help her with her first. And then be like, is that true? Is that genuinely the partner you want to be to your person? How do you feel when you're crying? Do you want to be consoled? Do you need him there with you? Yes, I want him to be there with me, holding me through that. I want that. Most people do. There's the hyper independence, right? They're like, no, leave me alone. I don't need to be seen as vulnerable. That's that vulnerability, especially the unwanteds, right? But we just get to the root. Why is that belief there? Is that belief even yours? Do you genuinely believe that? Or was that belief instilled in you through someone else, through your parenting, through your upbringing? And then what would you like to see in that scenario if it were you? And then,
See,
I bring kids into it. What would you wish for your kids? What would you wish for your children? What kind of home do you want them to be brought up in, especially mothers? This like sounds like I'm using this as like a manipulating, leveraging thing. Well, what about your kids? But it does work because we care about our children so deeply.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So in that case, you'll work with like couples and kind of say like, here's what it's going to look like. Here's what it might feel like.
Mm-hmm.
Here's what to expect, and expect it to be a little messy the first time, and don't expect it to land perfectly, and it's okay. Kind of give them permission to fail in terms of trying to feel emotions,
Yes. And in other things, I think we project a lot of high standards onto our men, and we're not giving them the permission to fail at something. And so they take that on where they'll either get really defensive or they won't take on certain things because they're scared they're going to look like they can't do it.
What's an example of projecting like a high standard that you've experienced in your practice?
It's a projecting of emotional intelligence. It's a projection of, well, if I am capable of this thing, you should be too. A lot of us do that. And
what particular, like the first thing that pops into my head is like maternal instinct, especially at a very, very young age.
Yeah.
Like, how do you not know what the baby crying this sound makes? Like, it's like it's not in here. I don't know.
You're not spending as much time with the baby typically. Typically. And like the most beautiful dynamic you can have when there's a newborn in the house. And I mean, we could get into this. There's so much that can go wrong in this scenario. Like genuinely men without knowing it, it's not conscious. There's this jealousy that can happen. Well, the baby's getting more attention than me. Yeah. That's the season you're in, man. I need you to pull that into your logic zone here and be like, oh, that's not, I need to let that go. Right. However, there's this, there is this expectation of you should parent like I parent. When you're entirely different beings with different upbringings, with different, and if you're not communicating how you want to parent together, you're going to parent differently. And we need to give each other space to explore that as long as they're still staying within the core values of the family that we've established together. Right. And there's so much there, but like projecting, oh, you should know what that means when the baby's crying like that. You should know what that means. You should be able to do these things, when in reality, the most beautiful dynamic you can have when there's a newborn in the house, her entire being is going into keeping this baby alive. So how can you care for her? She needs somebody taking care of her. It is one of the most loneliest times in a woman's life when she has just given birth to a baby.
That's an interesting, I can talk another 2 hours on this topic, because there's so many things that kind of layers into that. That it's the loneliest time ever. What's lonely about it?
That they don't, it's this societal projection that you should already know what you're doing. You should already be up and at it and functioning and doing all of these things, when in reality, your body just went through this a ridiculous journey and then had the finale of getting a baby out of your body. However that was, whether it be natural, cesarean, anything like that, it's still so taxing on our bodies. And then we're sent home and we have to keep this baby alive. We have to feed it, be up with it every hour, like all of these crazy things. And if you don't have a supportive partner
or system of people necessarily,
people,
that's something that really, it's interesting. It ties, we'll try and tie this all in with a little bow at the end. Ties into this bigger picture thing. Like, I think it's like in Japan or China, where they basically they mandate that like the mother doesn't do jack shit for like 3 months after the baby's born. It's like, you spend time with the baby, we do everything else.
Yes.
The whole family gets involved. Yes. Because like that bonding time is way too important. The baby's super vulnerable. Mom's recovering from a brutal physiological process, just went through that thing. Especially in the West, it's like, you gave birth, cool, we'll see you back to work in 3 weeks. Like, what the fuck? Seriously? Are you kidding right now? Like, you have a long and the idea of knowing what to do. There's like I'm beating up my dad a little bit today. I remember him talking about him and his father, and with him and me and my sister. He lost his father at a very young age, and I remember asking him like about raising kids, and he's like, honestly, we're just kind of just figuring out as you go. It's like, to a point, yes. How do we survive as a species if everyone had to figure out every single time we gave birth? Like, there had to have some multi-generational wisdom that's been lost in the last few generations. And I really think like especially in the industrial age, past 200-300 years, a lot of people have just been kind of just more and more isolated, go into your own house, stay by yourself. You mentioned lonely, and the first thing that popped into my mind is the idea that like you give birth and you're like, or you have like 2 or 3 kids, maybe you're a stay-at-home mom and you're just by yourself all day at home going crazy. When in reality, like 1,000 years ago, it's like you and every other mom in the entire tribe with all their kids, and we're all working together doing shit. They're playing together,
Yeah.
having fun, rolling in the dirt while you're talking, socializing, making sure they're okay, taking care of things. Like there was this built-in structure. Now we've just separated it all.
Yes.
And now we're trying to act like I don't understand why she's so stressed when I come home. She hasn't talked to anybody for 12 hours. Why does she want to talk to me? What the fuck do you think she wants to talk to you for?
Yes.
Or any
Yes.
of those things. And there's so much of the dynamics of how human beings really function that we're throwing out like every system that used to work with it along the way to try to create something brand new that just doesn't want to work as well as it could.
They're lonely. They're overstimulated. I've had so many women feel like I'm not a good wife anymore to my partner because I'm trying my best to be a good mother. My husband comes home and he wants physical attention. He wants to be like, and I'm touched out. And I wish more men, even women, understood what that term meant, because if they knew what that meant for them, they could express that better. And if men knew what that meant for their women, they could support that better. Your baby is attached to you all the time. And if you have another toddler as well, you're picking them up, they're hugging you, they need so much physical attention. And that's a beautiful thing. I mean, I'm a physical attention being, like, so I love it so much. But now I'm touched out. I've had a baby attached to my breast like how many times today? And I've had my toddler pulling at me, and there's noise, and there's just someone touching you at all times. Come home and let your wife have a shower by herself. No kids. Change your life.
Yeah.
Genuinely. Go have a shower. Go have 10 minutes where there's no one touching you. Genuinely. It's just this overstimulation. And it's just projected onto us that we're supposed to be able to handle that better. Yeah.
And this is where like multi-generational households they're being lost, and there's such a profound, it sounds, so this is an interesting thing. This is a good book. It's called Tribe on Homecoming and Belonging. Have you heard of it?
I've heard of it. I haven't read it.
Short read, very good book. And he talks about how basically a lot of like the households essentially were one of the defining marks of wealth and affluence throughout the generations in the past couple centuries was the idea that you had enough money to have separate rooms for people. Holy shit. Not realizing like, no, we used to all sleep in the same room for a reason.
Yeah.
Like kids, when they're 3 years old and they constantly want to crawl into bed with you, like, oh, they're just being annoying. Like, no, it's because we've been wired for millions of years, hundreds of thousands of years to be like, you are my safety beacon. Mom and dad, there's a bear in my room for all, like my brain's going off. Yes. There's like a monster, there's a bear, there's a lion, there's something that wants to eat me there. You guys are here. I want to be close proximity. Oh my God, they just won't leave us alone. Go back to your room.
Yeah.
Where you like play by my house growing up. It's like you walk in the front door. It's like hallway to the kitchen, around the corner, down the stairs, into the dark basement, around another corner, all the way back to the right. There's the playroom. Yeah. Like the farthest possible distance from like where my mom was in the kitchen cooking. And a lot of times I would just like, I'd have a room on the second floor and I would just take my toys down to like the room next to her just so I could just hear her. I knew she was there. I don't know. It's just like it lowers your anxiety. And it's just funny thinking about how like multi-generational households, it's like, oh my God, the mother and the grandma and the grandpa lives there and the uncle lives there. That's gotta be crazy. Like it's crazy, but it's also really beneficial in ways you don't understand.
Yeah.
I'm not encouraging everyone just go live with your in-laws like tomorrow if you can. But the idea being that like having like touch overload means throughout the day you would have normally handed the kid up to somebody. And now you don't. And I think I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of men just don't grasp that. Like, what's the big deal? I mean, you're just home playing with the kids all day. It's like, try it.
Yeah, there was this really fascinating long-term study. There'd been long enough time in this study to see that people in multi-generational homes all live longer. From the grandparents to the children in the household, all had extended lives. Is wild. I mean, the grandparents stick around longer, just meant like they hold on because they have these younger kids, keeping them young, keeping them busy, keeping them tied to something, right? And the kids, as their life went on for however that worked, I wish I could remember more details of the study, but again, I am not primed for that right now. It is really beautiful and fascinating. And so I'm very blessed to have a very good relationship with my parents. Now, we don't all live together, However, they're just like they're 3.5 minutes up the road. And that and alone has just been so wonderful. And I'm not saying you have to have a good relationship with your parents if that's not healthy for you, but there are people that you can find, hopefully, that can be a community for you. We moved across the country a couple years ago, and even just finding our little homeschool community, families who align with the same values and things that we have, has been amazing to be able to say, okay, I trust and love that my kids can go into these other homes and play and do all of these things, and I get a little bit of break, or I can go visit. I love that too, but I can have a little bit of break knowing that they're in a space that I would value as well as my own space. Like having a community like that is so wonderful. Even if you're not a huge social person, I'm not. I personally love being in my own home. I love that I get to work from home and do all of these things, and just our little unit is so special to me, and we have such a beautiful environment and just vibe genuinely in our home because we're all such lovey people and we express emotions and we have good communication skills and all of these things. But it is nice too to be able to have those people.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think more men really need to not be afraid to just start building these communities and start reaching out to people to have more social connections, to really get in touch with themselves emotionally, get in touch with their feelings, get them out a little more openly, and
and
bridge those connections more.
Communicate that that's what you want to do. I'm ready to be more emotional, but it's going to be messy, and I need your support in that. I'm not going to be perfect, and it's going to be messy. And sometimes I'm going to have to come back and apologize. And sometimes I'm going to have to come back and say, actually, that wasn't my truth. I am really upset. And I just didn't feel safe to express anger, or however that is, however you want to do that. But just trusting that on both sides, when you're in a relationship, that there's just going to be mess. I think we have this delusion as adults that when we decide to do something, we should be great at it right away. When we look at children learning to do new things, we're so supportive. We're so supportive, like, yeah, buddy, keep going. No, you can do it. It's okay. You fell down. Get back up. Could you imagine if we talk to children like we talk to ourselves and we talk to other adults? Can you imagine if I said to my son, oh, well, you tried walking, you fell down. Maybe it's not for you. You're the worst parent of all time. It takes a kid like an average of 2,000 steps or something before they can start walking securely, like a minimum, right? And we're out here like, oh, I didn't do this very well. This must not be for me. I shouldn't express my emotions. It didn't go well the first time. It's not supposed to, especially emotions. Emotions are messy.
Yeah, that's a whole podcast episode in itself. Is the idea that like shame is it's an interesting topic to talk on. Shame is a emotion meant to be triggered by the people, more or less. But you have to learn from somewhere. Like no kid is raised with just like hating themselves. It's all something someone somewhere taught you, like you're not good enough to do this, and then being able to figure out where that came from, letting go of it, and then not translating it into the relationship and putting it forward, especially. This has been fantastic. I'm just about at time. I think we're both tapped out. We're both in our bad seasons, me being sick and all that stuff.
Yes, me being in my inner winter and at the end of my day, definitely. I'm a morning person. We're recording this at night, so.
Next time I'll book you for the morning if I can. Absolutely. Awesome.
Love it.
Where can we find your content?
I mean, I'm on Instagram and on Facebook. I partner with Kevin and Alan. We do a lot within the Next Level University community. And genuinely, I love to just talk about our free Facebook group. It's a space of just daily growth where you can feel safe to ask questions, grow, shine, make a mess. We're all about failing forward in that space. We're all about messy action and just a group of like-minded people who are doing their best to do a little bit better every day. And that's a free space that I run and help guys run. And so that is one that is just a wonderful community. But genuinely, if you ever want to talk about anything that we talked about today, my DMs are always open. I do free connection calls with anyone who wants to just talk and learn, or maybe you just need a safe space to vent where you feel like you're going to be valued, heard, and maybe I can toss some empathy your way.
Both men and women. Absolutely.
Yes, definitely.
Awesome. Thank you so much for this today, Amy.
I appreciate it. Thank you.